on, Alan, I believe is a painting rather than an actual photograph. Can you tell us about that painting?
Oh, that's a painting by Miss Cohen. It's called At the Capstan. And that's the old wooden capstan used to be on beer plates. And she painted in 1890 something, I'm not sure exactly now. She used to live at Far End, up Common Hill, nearly up on the Common, Miss Cohen. And she named every one of them. I got the results and names of all of them on one of my photographs, so I have another one. And the old wooden capstan that you see there, the old men that I was told of, my father and I used to tell me that the old fishermen take their compass out of the boat, take it up on that capstan, rest it on there, and then look out toward Beer Head, and then Beer Head was due south, and the capstan was set to that. Now that's the old men's idea, so that's what I was told about that one.
I see there are 8 men manhandling the winch there. It was pretty heavy, I imagine.
Well, it was. That was got a chain on, isn't it?
Yes.
When they did away with the chains, I don't know. Meyer came in. And that's a big photograph. That's a big painting, that was.
Now we have a view of Beer, the beach and Beer itself.
Oh, that's that's a later picture, a lot later. That was after they had engines after 1916, because the boats were pulled out bow first, not stern first like the sailing boats, so the old motor boats. Up on by the shelter, up on the cliff, is a hut behind the shelter, and it's not, I can't remember it, but the old men told me that was Billy Butler's. Not that Billy Butler had the campsite, no, but he was a one-armed man who used to make baskets for a living on the cliff. That was his living in there.
Am I right in thinking that photograph shows the fisherman's light?
Yes, that's the fisherman's light on the cliff. And that was a memorial given to Beer by Jane Bidney, who was a woman in Beer that was commissioned to make Queen Victoria's wedding lace. The flounce that we had brought back to Beer some years later, and it was called Mrs. Worsborn. She married a man from Gloucester called Worsborn, and she also gave a new iron capstan as a memorial for the fishermen of the Beer. The fisherman's light now is in the church, the lantern itself. I was the last one to paint it, because they wanted it painted after the war. I was only about 16, 17 years old then. And no one would go up because he had a round pole. And if you had a round pole, you put a ladder up against it, he'd turn. So Grandfather came up with me, and we rigged up a bosun's chair, and I painted it by the top half where the lantern went to, and the weather vane on the top was black, the pole was white, and the bottom part and all the gateway around the ironwork was always painted black. It was made of Beer marble. The
purpose of the light was to let fishing boats see the bay.
If you were coming in from Beer Head, coming ashore, and you line that one up with Beer Church, that which you knew you was right in the centre of the beach then. As you came in through, it lined up.
And how was it illuminated?
What? It was an oil lamp.
Oil?
It was oil. That was before they had electric.
And how long did the oil last? Did it have to be...
I don't know, but they delivered it every day and put it out and raised it up every night. I don't know who was the main man to do that. They must have had someone particularly for that. I never asked that question. I was never told who it was.
I see the allotments are prominent.
There's always been allotments.
Yeah.
Some people say it was where they had years ago was the grapevines. It was not there. The grapevines was up where the old vicarage was, which is the southern slopes, for making the sacrificial line. We belonged to Sherborne Abbey those days, but that was always been allotments, in the houses always beside the road, plus others in the village.
And the allotment land belongs to Clinton Estates.
Always belonged to Clinton Estates.
And they rented it out to local people.
Outside those people.
Do you know how much they charged?
I don't know. My father had one down there when he came away from the other allotments, when they built on the old allotments on New Road. He came down there and it wasn't a great deal of money in those days, not what that sort of thing was.
One interesting thing I noticed, Alan, is that the cliff seems more prominent there. It's fallen away at one point, hasn't it?
Yes, it was just past Tom Children's Hole. It fell down, and I think, from what I understood, in the 20s, somebody heard a rumbling and his wife told him to go back to sleep, don't think about things. And the next morning they found the sea was white with chalk as the cliff had fallen down. And it was always called the Rougemont when I was a boy.
Quite a lot of cliff was lost.
There was a lot of cliff was lost at that particular time. But it was twice after that in my time I remember coming down during my time. So...
Fortunately, we've got a photograph of beer facing west. Sorry, east.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that photo?
Well, that must have been in the 1900s, because the shelters, Queen Victoria's shelters up on the Jubilee ground. Now the white flagpole you see up in the circle, that was the Coast Guard's flagpole. And you find the King's Hole is over there, all the boats, however, spread right the way across the whole beach those days. And there was a lot of small boats over there when I was a boy. It's only after the last war they started to fall away. They never had so many boats. The old men retired and the young men never come down there.
There's a lot of fishing boats there. You mentioned earlier that they came in broadside.
Yes, they did.
There's one that's clearly shown as being broadside.
Well, he's come in that way. Why I don't know, because all the rest are facing uphill, with the pointed end, the bow end, pointing uphill. So he must have come in broadside on for some reason. Perhaps he come ashore in the weather before, with hard weather, and they just left it lay there. Because if they were full of water, they'd never empty them.
The photograph shows King's Isle.
King's Hole. People call it King's Isle, but on the Ordnance Survey map, and the fishermen that I know had always told me, it's King's Hole, my son, not King's Isle. So it was always known as King's Isle to most people, but to me it was always been King's Hole as it was on the Ordnance Survey map.
The photo clearly shows it's low tide.
Yeah.
Now, how much variance was there in the sea level?
About 10 to 15, 20 feet sometimes, depending on the tides, out spring tides and high tide and low tides, into the two different tides.
Beer Beach today is much wider than
They say over the corner by King's Hole, they blocked it, the concrete, and the pebbles can't get out through it anymore, so they can't go anywhere, so they pile up over on that side of the beach. They can't get out. And this beach now is 10 times bigger than ever was in my day.
And higher too. I've been told.
Higher and deeper. So many pebbles are now than what there ever was. It's changed a great deal since those days.
And this photo shows the old path all the way to Seaton, which was
the cliff path.
Closed, I think, in the 1980s after a landslip.
I don't know when they stopped doing that, but the part of the cliff fell away, and they said it was going to become dangerous. So they stopped people going out across there. But I can remember when they said it fell away, which was up over King's Hole, some of the old fishermen had allotments up there. They weren't very big. But in one particular spot there was a blackthorn bush which had a number of sloes on it. And there was an old lady which was, our father was a distant relation of ours, called Mutter, and she used to make sloe gin. And I used to pick boxes of sloes for her to make the sloe gin with. And it was very potent, they told me. I never tried it, but...
Did she sell this commercially, or...?
No, it was always made for Christmas.
Right.
And she used to invite drinkers in there, and they'd drink, but they didn't come out sober.
This photograph of Beer Beach, again looking eastward, has got some ladies present. That's an unusual thing, isn't it?
Well, if you look at the dresses, Red Wardian, that was when people came to visit there a lot, when visitors came.
So most likely those are visitors.
They were visitors. Back in those days, the way they're dressed. And beer was known in those days for a lot of people came to the village as visitors. And beer, a lot of painters came here. It was very famous for painting areas, where artists used to come here. That's why we got McCullum's monument in the memorial ground for.
And I believe a lot of photographers came to this area.
There was a great number of photographers came here.
And they took photos for postcards.
They made postcards out, and that's when visitors came to the village. Of course, they wanted to send something home to their friends and relatives, and they bought a postcard, which was a photograph that people produced into photos for the postcard business. There's quite a number. Francis Frith was the main one that used to come here. But there was another firm in Reigate, there was one in Dawlish, there were several people around here.
There's a group of young children on the beach. Is that a net that they're sitting on, or...?
That would be an old net.
Would they have been doing anything to it?
No, they just went on the beach and they were sat beside of it. I suppose they might have played around with it, but I doubt it. It looks like visitors, they're not the local people. Because they're dressed up too well.
Did women go on the beach, or was it mainly a man's place? Did women go on the beach, or was it mainly a man's place?
Mostly men.
But that was just because that fishermen.
Yes, there was some women went down. The later years after the war they went down, but before years in my time, I can only ever remember my mother being on the beach once. And that was when my father and another man, Leslie Miller, and his brother, was asked to go to Dunkirk with their boat because he had bigger engines than the rest of the fleet. That they only got as far as Weymouth and it was all over by then. By the time they got up to Weymouth, little 12 horsepower engines in 25-foot boats, they only got as far as Weymouth and they said it was all over now. And they came back, and that was the only time I can ever remember my mother being on Beer Beach.